So, welcome back. Today is another one of those nice little travel days. I am here at the Hiller Aviation Museum, checking it out. Wasn't my first choice, but I will say it was free because today is the free Smithsonian Museum Day. When I say it wasn't my first choice, I was kind of hoping to go over to the aircraft carrier that's across the bay, but because of circumstances, like we only have one car and my sister had work today, we had to compromise, and it ended up this museum is actually right over by where she works, and I could just kind of hop over here while she's working, so that's what we did. Now, the Hiller Aviation Museum is pretty neat. It's small, admittedly, so I didn't feel that I was rushed or anything. And the amount of stuff they have for a small museum is quite amazing. Like, for example, in their little backyard area, they have a perfect view of an airport landing strip, so you could watch planes take off and land for as much as they're open. Now, I shouldn't mention that the airport's easily visible from the freeway, and so it is one of those places where, like, personally, I always just drive by it and never think about stopping here because it's just one of those local things, you know, you take for granted. But it is a pretty amazing place. Now, like I said, because there's that airport, I've actually been here before, or in the general area, I should say. There's a really good steakhouse right down the street from here, as well as I used to work at a building close to the Oracle buildings that are right across the way from here. Just going on to more about what's on the inside of this museum, they have all sorts of different little areas for you to check out. Aside from being able to see the landing strip in the backyard, they actually have a 747 that's kind of been broken down. You could see the engine and how big it actually is. You could go walk around it. People are actually standing in it and stuff. You could go into the 747, which admittedly, because today was a free day, it was packed, so I just skipped it because I've actually flown on the top floor of a 747 before. And you could actually see all what the chairs look like, the kind of bar area that used to be there back in the day, and the cockpit, which is kind of cool. Speaking of cockpits, they do have another, like, 737, just the cockpit fuselage area that you could go and check out, so you could see it from the outside first, and then if you just walk around, because it's a cutoff, you could go see the actual inside as well. It's pretty neat, so you can see the cockpit area. Beyond that, they actually have like a whole kind of aviation like game area that's demonstrations that you could try taking off, landing. And they had multiple of these. They have full like areas where you could test your skill in like doing that's paid, so you could actually like be a pilot. And then they also have areas that are free, so that you could just sit down and check it out. They're not as nice, definitely, but overall, real neat place. I'm just gonna swap zones here, even though the light is super nice here. One more in a moment. All right. And so, as I was saying, aside from the backyard area and kind of the aviation like demo area, you could also go to a drone area, which is kind of neat. They have like information on like what the first drones were, which were like NASA or military type drones, as well as a whole general area for you to fly and test out drones if you want. There is a little charge to that. And then just, it kind of reminded me a lot of the Smithsonian Museum over in, I think it was Virginia, maybe Maryland, but it was the one that wasn't on the mall, where they had a ton of different types of planes in it. This place had that same type of deal where like they had an albatross plane, which is this water plane that was huge. Kind of reminds me of the DuckTales plane, if you're familiar with it. And They also had like a ton of different first flights and information surrounding it. So like the first planes that flew, gliders, what was the first, I believe they said it was heavier than air item to fly, which was pretty cool. That's a glider, obviously. And then they had this area where they had kind of some antique type deals. I found out that the first person to ever fly in California was someone named, I believe his name was Fu, and it was a Chinese immigrant who came to California and actually defied the odds and ended up being the first. Plane just took off. Was the first person in California to ever fly. He built a plane and flew it after studying mechanical and aviation engineering, so that was pretty neat. Beyond that, they had all sorts of interesting little tidbits here. There was a Messerschmitt car, because after World War II, the Germans, the company Messerschmitt, was not allowed to build anything that was a plane, like the Messerschmitt 109 that was so famous, and they weren't allowed to build anything that could be used as a weapon of war. So, trying not to go out of business, they went into cars, and they had a really cute, it was kind of like a motorcycle car mix here. And they also had a ton of different helicopters here, as well as like, I don't even know what to call them, like hovercrafts, I guess. It's those like single person, like you stand in the middle and there's like either a fan blade or a turbine underneath you that pushes you up in the air. But the amount of information and amount of stuff here is pretty fantastic. It's pretty cool. For the $18 entry fee, if you had to pay that, I'm like debating whether that'd be worth it or not. But I mean, the stuff they do have is pretty awesome here. So, yep, take it or leave it. Other than that, it was overall a good time, no alcohol required, as Jeremy Johns would say. And it was just a ton of information and very, very easy afternoon. So, yeah. All right. Until the next time. Peace.